session. Yes, we're going to have one of our kings join us all the way from ACUP Ghana, King Hadi Yakubu, to share a topic discussion, the imperative for African unity in our time. As per usual, welcome to all of those who perhaps joining us for the first time. But what we will have is a quick presentation, and then after that we would encourage everybody to participate and share their thoughts in the session, because we love to walk away with everybody's idea. I think that is the idea of the session. We learn when we all participate and contribute in sharing our knowledge, our opinion, our views. We want to achieve a democratic arrangement where every voice can be heard. It doesn't matter the angle you come at, but it allows us to stretch the concept or the agenda in many directions, so that you know how it goes. You don't always want to be in a group where all of you think the same all the time. You want to look at different corners and different angles, and that stretches the team. But in the end, we do want to, with that knowledge, put it into gear so that we keep aligning as we build the kind of Africa that we want, as we create the kind of unity we want. So let's be mindful that we need to make waves this very year, 2024, as we discuss in all of these evening sessions. So without any further ado, after the presentation, we will then allow moments for everybody to participate and contribute. We'll just maybe have 3 minutes per speaker, so that we all can go around, and then we will close the session at 9:30 p.m. So that's how it's going to go. Once again, welcome to all of you this evening. So I'm going to hand it over the platform to our king tonight for presentation. Over to you, King. Do we have King Hadi?
Good evening, comrades. Greetings to everyone. My name is Hadi Yakubu. I am coordinator for a Pan-African movement called Africans Rising, and also, collaborate and partner with ACUP, Africa Continental Unity Party. And I'm very happy to be here today or tonight, wherever people are, to talk about the issue of African unity and its imperative in this day and age. So thank you very much for the invitation, and I hope that we can have this discussion in a very dispassionate manner. I have to apologize from the onset that I would not be able to stay up to 9:30 because I have other engagements to go to. Apologies for that. But I hope that the time that we still have together, we're able to digest these issues and discuss them in a dispassionate manner, in a way that moves us a step further towards a liberated and unified Africa, for Africans wherever we may be. So I'll begin my short presentation from far back in ancient times, and we all know about the glory of civilizations that African people, that black people created many centuries ago. Things that have to do with writing, that have to do with numerals, that have to do with medicine, that have to do with philosophy, and all aspects of knowledge were created and flourished in Africa by Africans. Complex mathematical systems, geometry, algebra, and all manner of things were created by Africans in Africa. So many have asked the question, if this was such a glory which we had in those times, how come we no longer have it? And some also, for perhaps diabolical reasons, would start to tell the history of Africa from the mishaps that happened to us in our journey, historical journey. Such mishaps having enormous toll on us collectively from then till date. When we move from those ancient times to the times when African people began to form such, smaller kingdoms rather than empires, we see again the glory of governance, we see the glory of knowledge, we see the glory of African people's ability to trade. And this is really crucial because trade was the basis upon which contacts, happened, apart from, of course, familial and ethnic and, such connections. Trade was the key ingredient for connections between African people across different expanse of territory. And this was well before, the colonialists came to Africa. And this was one of the mishaps that I mentioned about the colonization of the African continent. Now, returning to the question of if we had this glory, how did we lose it? And the simple answer is that because of division, because of internal divisions or divisions that were orchestrated from outside, we lost the plot. And gave opportunity, that then gave opportunity to external forces to be able to exploit our weaknesses. And once you're divided internally, you begin to show weaknesses. And these weaknesses were then exploited by external forces in order to subjugate us as African people, steal our resources, mutilate our bodies, rape our women, kill our children, destroy our environments and our cultures, and put the seeds of modern destruction of our societies. It boils down to division. And with division and the taking advantage of our weaknesses, this division was cemented in its physical forms in the year 1884 at the Berlin Conference in Germany, when colonialists sat at the table, put the map of Africa on the table, and used a pencil to draw lines across the continent, calling them borders. I regret to say that these borders drawn by colonialists continue to be the basis of our nationhood today. So when you call yourself a South African, or you call yourself a Zambian, or you call yourself a Ghanaian, you're not Ghanaian by choice. You're not Ghanaian by any sort of personal choice. You're Ghanaian because of colonial activity. You're Ghanaian because of colonial activity. That colonialists sat in Berlin, in Germany, in 1884 at a conference, and they put these borders there. The border that divides Ghana and Togo, the border that divides Ghana and Burkina Faso, the border that divides Kenya and Tanzania, the border that divides South Africa and its neighbors. These borders were not created by us. The question is, why did the colonialists create the borders? The colonialists created the borders not just because the borders created the physical manifestation of the divisions that were needed in order to cement our weaknesses so as to be able to subjugate us, but because the colonialists had, prior to the 1884 conference, started trading activities with our people in Africa. And because of greed and all those things, they used to fight amongst themselves a lot. And by the way, not many people know this fact, but no continent has fought amongst themselves. No peoples have fought amongst themselves more than Europeans in world history. No peoples have fought amongst themselves more than Europeans. So part of the fighting, they exported it to their trade overseas. They started to trade amongst themselves, to trade with us, and then started to fight amongst themselves for who has the right over which place for trade or some sea navigation of some sort. And these quarrels got to a head to the point where they decided, let us meet and discuss and divide these places amicably amongst ourselves so that we stop the fighting. This was the reason for the 1884 Berlin Conference, and it was held in Germany. Now that conference lasted from November 1884 to February 1885, and they drew all these borders. The thing about the borders is that those people sitting at the table there did not even know what they were doing. In fact, of course, they knew that they were drawing lines on the map, but they didn't know where the map was located in space, in reality. They did not know. None of them had ever been to Africa before. None of them. So you can imagine the arbitrariness and the arrogance of certain people to sit on a table far away in Germany and decide that particular portions of territory or land belonged to those within their conference, when they had never even stepped foot in that particular territory before. And this is the tragedy of the current state. So this is where those borders started. So if we're talking about borders in Africa, the border between DRC and Rwanda is the source of major conflicts there now. The border between Uganda and Kenya has become the source of conflict between the two governments. Ghana and Ivory Coast have had to go to international court for arbitration. The borders have become sources of conflict for so long, because these borders were created without any regard for the people living in them. And because it was created without any regard for the people living in those places, it literally cut certain families, ethnic groups, cultural areas into two. Or in fact, into so many, parts. I was last in part of my work as organizer and mobilizer for Pan-Africanism and African unity. I was once in Burkina Faso, in a particular village called Mognori. And that Mognori is a village that is sort of divided between Ghana and Burkina Faso by a small stream of water. And it was interesting because the people across the two sides of the water body see themselves as one. They speak the same language and they have similar sources of livelihoods, including even the water. They all fetch from that water body. Now, that is the nature of the borders that were created. Their family members across on the two sides of the river, some in the Ghana side, being Ghanaians, holding Ghanaian ID cards and identity and citizenship cards, whilst other members of the same family are in Burkina Faso, holding citizenship in Burkina Faso as citizens of Burkina Faso and not Ghana. And the same thing, if you go to Ghana-Togo border, I've been to the Ghana-Togo border at Aflao, and it is interesting. The people speak the same language. As a matter of fact, when you leave Volta region of Ghana in Aflao and enter into the capital city of Togo, Lomé, the people speak the same language. Because they are one people. They speak the Ewe language. They are one people. The people in, I went as far in Lomé as the central market. And Ewe is the language of transaction in that market. For those who may be from Lomé, this is what I experienced. There may be other languages, but I saw that Ewe is a fairly widespread. It's in fairly widespread use across the many places in Lomé, in Togo, just as it is in Aflao, in the Volta region of Ghana, and all the other parts of that region of Ghana. But you see, you go to a village in Western region, called Badukrum. I haven't been for that one. I haven't been there, but somebody sent me information about how even a household is divided, between between Ghana and Ivory Coast. Some part of the household in Ghana and another part in Ivory Coast, as you can see. So these are the realities of our times. If you go to Cameroon and Nigeria, the border between Cameroon and Nigeria, the Mandera ethnic group astrays this border. They live across that. If you go to Senegal and the Gambia, the Sira, the Wolof, the Mandinka, the Fula, in these ethnic groups, you have families in Gambia, you have families in Senegal. The same family divided between Gambia and Senegal. In fact, if you look at the geography between Senegal and the Gambia, is actually very crazy, because the Gambia is a small strip of land just by the sea, and it is surrounded on all other sides, on all three sides, by Senegal. The fourth side is the seaside. So this is the geography of Senegal and the Gambia. Meanwhile, these people are the same. This is a place that used to be called Senegambia. Normally just call it Senegambia, but the people are basically, the same people, the same ethnic groups, the same families, the same language. They speak the same language. But come and see, when Gambia has his border and he has his passport, the citizens of Senegal have their Senegalese passport, their Senegalese citizenship, and the citizens of the Gambia have their Gambian passport and their Gambian citizenship. So these are the practicalities that we are talking about the divisions that were put in place. In 1963, before we come to 65, in 1963, Kwame Nkrumah wrote a book. And that book was titled Africa Must Unite. Africa Must Unite. And his thesis in that book, which I'm sure many of you here have read, is that divided we are weak, but united we could become, as Africans, the biggest catalyst for world peace. In other words, when we are separate in our individual states, because unfortunately, after gaining independence, our leaders could not erase these borders, which were the foundations of colonialism, and bring Africa together. In fact, this book that I'm talking about was launched on the day that the leaders actually met in Addis Ababa to discuss this very same issue. And Kwame Nkrumah had the occasion to share the book among some of his colleague heads of states in order to try and convince them that it was a good idea to unite our forces rather than moving individually as nation states. Because he argued that as individual states, which African country has the capacity to withstand the intrigues of imperialism? None. But united, we could become a power bloc that does not only have deterrence against any sort of imperialist intrigues, but would have the capacity to take our own destiny into our own hands and to harness our natural resources in a way that benefits us rather than benefiting others. This was a simple thesis. But this did not materialize as we know today. 2 years later, Kwame Nkrumah published another of his very influential books called Neocolonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. Neocolonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. That book basically analyzed what we are seeing today. It analyzed and predicted what we are seeing today. A system that prides on the extraction of the material resources of the African continent, or in fact the former colonies of the metropolises, the countries that used to be colonies, the extraction of their natural resources for the development and prosperity of the so-called developed world. This is what Kwame Nkrumah described in Neocolonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. And one critical point I would like us to take away from it is when Kwame Nkrumah mentioned the mechanisms of neocolonialism. He said that the way neocolonialism operates. And what is neocolonialism, by the way? Neocolonialism is basically a continuation of colonialism by another means, right? So direct colonialism was when we had white people here presiding over our affairs and stealing our resources. Of course, we all know what colonialism had done to us in terms of stealing our resources and destroying our society. But after we had fought them and gained independence, they basically mutated and installed the neocolonialist system. That neocolonialist system does not need the white people to be here physically. It only needs their agents to be in place, their puppets. And through their puppets, they can control our economies, and by controlling our economies, they can control our political and every other affairs. And we are seeing it today in every part of Africa. There is no African country today that is free from neocolonialism. And what was Kwame Nkrumah's diagnosis? Kwame Nkrumah said that the way neocolonialism operates is by the tried and tested mechanism that has been used from time immemorial by minorities to subjugate majorities. That anywhere you see minorities subjugating majorities, it is by one strategy and one strategy only. And that strategy is divide and rule. Divide and conquer. That is that strategy. The same strategy that colonialism used, it is the same strategy that neocolonialism is using. Because they know very well that as long as you are divided, you continue to be weak, and they have the upper hand over you. Now, what are the manifestations of the divisions? And I'll just take a couple of minutes to outline. What are the manifestations? We're talking about the borders, but these are the physical things that you go to the border, you see the border post and all of those things. However, these things are ingrained in people's minds. They are ingrained in people's minds now. So the borders may be far away from some people, that when we talk about them, some people think, okay, well, I'm in the center of the country. Maybe I'm in Kumasi in Ghana, or let's say somewhere in the middle of the country. what the hell is border? I've never seen a border. Yes, you've never seen a border, but you have it in your mind that you are a Ghanaian. That notion of being Ghanaian is defined by specific territorial borders that came about as a result of colonialism. So we all are holding citizenships that are currently still the products of colonialism, despite the political independence of 1957, if we are being honest with ourselves. And by virtue of the endurance of these borders and territories, administrative territories, all other things are done based on them. So today, we talk about currency. When we talk about trading amongst ourselves, we are talking about currency, you know? And look at Ghana and Togo. I've already talked about how the people are so related. Ghana and Ivory Coast, how the people are so related. Ghana and Burkina Faso, how the people along the borders are so related. However, if you cross the border, there's no way you can only trade by changing your currency. So that's the first thing. And I was in Beat 9 in Aflao, just at the Togo border, and there's one wire fence that has been used to divide the Ghana side from the Togo side. Now that fence, that wire fence, is not just a physical wire, because the people from across both sides of the fence speak the same language. But if you have to buy something from across the fence, you have to change your currency from Ghana cedi into Togo CFA franc before you can buy anything from across the fence. And I actually tested it because I bought carrots. The people have created a hole in the fence, and they can buy things from across. I bought carrots, but I had to change my money into Togo CFA franc before I could buy. Once you cross the fence, the passports will change, the number plates will change, the official language will change, the currency will change. These are the physical manifestations that affect us on a daily basis in our transactions across the continent. If you go to the border between Burkina Faso and DRC at Goma, Rusizi and Goma, there are tens of thousands of people who pass there. In fact, the statistics shows that 30,000 people cross the border on a daily basis to do trade. That's a trade. They are carrying things on their head, fruits, could be electronic gadgets, just normal stuff. But the currency in DRC is different from the currency in Rwanda. The passport is different, the number plate is different, the people have to pass through border restrictions, numerous checks, and some women are even molested and harassed by border guards. This is the story of our borders. I mentioned the example of Senegal and the Gambia. And it is, for me, it is probably the most glaring example of how division can affect us or affects us on a daily basis. Gambia is surrounded on all sides by Senegal, and it's just a small strip of land within Senegal, but it is independent and it is a sovereign state on its own with 2.5 million people. The Gambian dalasis is not valid in Senegal. You can't spend the dalasis of Gambia in Senegal. You can also not spend the CFA franc, Senegalese CFA franc in Gambia. The Gambian dalasis is not valid in Senegal. Senegalese CFA franc is not valid in the Gambia. I wish I had a map to show you, for you to see the geography. If you cross the border, when it comes to local language, when the people speak their language, they speak the same language. They speak either the Mandinka or the Fula or the Wolof. But the official language changes. The official language changes from English in Gambia to French in Senegal. And what does that mean? It means that all administrative procedures, including the legal system, the education system, the lawmaking process, the documentation of government processes, everything, every single thing is in English in the Gambia, and every other single thing is in French. The French are using the French legal system. The Gambians are using the English system, which are not compatible in any way. Right. So these are some of the practicalities of how things affect us. If you look at this case of the Gambia, of 2.5 million people, they have their own currency. For God's sake, how can 2.5 million people support a currency to be strong? What sort of production do they even do? There are countries in Africa which are less than 1 million people. Comoros, the Republic of Comoros. Less than 1 million population. When we talk about trade, China of 1.4 billion people is coming to negotiate with tiny countries like Comoros of population of less than 1 million people, or with Gambia a population of less than 3 million people. How do we stand a chance realistically? Ghana of 32 million people. How do we stand a chance realistically to be able to really stand on our feet realistically? Look at the case of Lesotho in South Africa. Lesotho is practically a territory within South Africa on all sides. On all sides. But somebody traveled to South Africa and had to quickly dash into Lesotho for quick business and come out and come back to take his flight at Oliver Tambo Airport. He moved into Lesotho, and when he was coming back, they told him that he had checked out of the Lesotho immigration and was now at the South Africa immigration to enter, and he was told that now that his visa, now he was not a person from Lesotho, he was somebody from East Africa. He was told that his visa to enter South Africa was a one entry visa, single entry visa. So since he left South African territory and entered Lesotho, he can no longer come back unless he applies for another visa. Can you imagine? Now Lesotho also told him that he has already moved out of Lesotho, so he can now no longer come back to Lesotho. So he was left in no man's land. Ironically, he was moving with somebody from Sweden, a white Swedish. And this white Swedish could simply enter South Africa visa free. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So these divisions, they affect our trade. We have as many as 33 currencies in Africa. And none of these currencies stands up to the test of the global hegemonic currencies. None of them. Because why? If I want to trade with somebody in the same continent in Africa, I have to now convert my cedis into dollars before I can pay the person. So it happens that every African who wants to trade beyond the borders is chasing the dollar in order to be able to trade amounts between himself and another African. Dollar is the currency of Americans who hate us with passion. Why do we have to put it as a medium between us? Why? But because we do that, we are always chasing the dollar, and by virtue of demand and supply, the dollar is always going to be stronger than our currencies. That's it. Causing inflation, and prices of goods are skyrocketing. When there's inflation in America, it affects our currencies. It affects us here because we tie the fortunes and the life of our economies to the American dollar. So America wants to collapse all our economies today. They can collapse all our economies with the manipulation of the dollar. So we are not really sovereign countries. We are not. We are not. We are in neocolonialism. Kwame Nkrumah said that neocolonialism is practiced where you have all the trappings of international sovereignty and political independence. But in reality, your economic policy is dictated from outside. And by virtue of that, your political decisions are also dictated from outside. Because he who controls your stomach controls your mind, controls your head. It's as simple as that. All right. So finally, and this is the final lap of my presentation, what is the solution to all of this? What is the solution to all of this? We have seen a lot of currents happening now. We are seeing, young people who are tired of, beats playing second fiddle to all these colonial intrigues. We're seeing a lot of pushback. We are seeing a lot of pushback. We are seeing a lot of people who are fed up. Realistically, unfortunately, we are not organized enough as Afrocentric people to take advantage of the times, and that is where the solution lies. Now, far back in 1963, as I've already mentioned, Kwame Nkrumah mentioned the solution to our problems as African unity. 2 years later, he published another book and said that divide and rule is the mechanism of the imperialists, the neocolonialists. So the logic goes that if the mechanism or the tactic that your oppressor is using to oppress you is divide and rule, what is the logical response that you must take? Your oppressor is using division to divide you in order to conquer you. You that you want to liberate yourself from conquest and oppression, what should be your logical answer, your logical response to that? Brothers and sisters, I don't see any logical response to division and divide and rule, but unity. And what we are seeing today means that what Kwame Nkrumah was saying in 1963, 1965, and 1958, and all of those things are even more urgent now, more imperative now than they ever would be. And I've met an elder of mine who has lamented the delay in African unity and has told me that if this generation in this 21st century we do not achieve what in 1960s they should have achieved, then it will take another 100 years for this time to come. And I look at global currents and I analyze geopolitics, and I see that he was right. This is the moment. And this moment comes only but once in a lifetime. Once. What are we seeing now? We are seeing that empire is panicking. The confidence of other players in the international system is rising, because now there's not just one place of geopolitical economic power. The layers and structures of geopolitical hegemony are still intact, but it is only a matter of time before they are demolished. And many things are shaping and reshaping in before our very eyes. Unfortunately, Africa is not in the play. Africa is not in the game. In fact, we are the prize, because everybody who is playing the game is playing to win over Africa. Nobody is talking to us about how we can make ourselves better, how we can unite and become a power force. Look at the poles of power. Now, the American hegemony with its European lapdogs are there, Western European lapdogs. Then you have the Eastern European bloc led by Russia. Then you have the Asians. Of course, some of the Asians are also lapdogs of the American hegemony. But as soon as the hegemony falls, they will switch camps to China. After all, I mean, these are very close to ethnically to China than to Europeans. But why is America united with Western Europe? Because these are the same people. We know how America was formed. America, the United States of America, the dominant population there that we call Americans today, the white population, did not originate from America. They came from Western Europe. So they have that racial superiority among themselves. And America is the leader of that. That is why they listen to America. If America cops, look at Britain. Britain at some point had colonized more than half of the whole world. Today America backs and, they stand at ease. Because America has emerged as the leader of that particular racial bloc. And their intention is to maintain the systems and structures that give them privilege over other races. This is what we are seeing. But confidence of other players is growing, and they are fighting back. They are fighting back. For the last, few years, Iran has the confidence to assert itself, attack American bases or attack American military base, or is, a genocidal baby Israel. There were many decades ago that Iran could not have that confidence to attack anything American, because they knew they would be wiped out. But now, Iran has Russia, Iran has China. China has already overtaken America economically. or would do so in the shortest possible time. And with economic power comes political power and military power. Because Kwame Nkrumah said everything economic is political and everything political is military. So all these blocks, where is Africa? Imagine if Africa were to emerge as another block. There is America, which is a combination of 50 states. There is Western Europe, which has its block of the European Union with 27 states. There is China with its massive population of 1.4 billion people. And then there is Russia with its massive territory. Just imagine if Africa were to emerge on the other side of the world, of the globe, to become another block, another power block of 55 states in one united Africa. A united Africa would give us a place. We have 54 or so votes in the General Assembly, but none of it matters. Can you imagine? The UN generals, none of it matters. One vote by America or UK or Russia or China can nullify all the votes of Africans. So the only way, the only solution, we are thinking about solutions, is for us to unite our forces. And what does unity look like? In this kind of global headwinds that we are seeing, because energy is a top priority now. Let's talk about moving away from fossil fuels. Africa again has 60% of the renewable energy resources. When Russia stopped its gas to Europe, they quickly turned to Africa. So pipes have been laid. There are pipes laid from Nigeria through Niger and all of those places all the way to Europe that pump gas and all these things so that Europeans can have electricity, Europeans can have energy to heat their homes. Meanwhile, 600 million people in Africa do not have electricity. What is this? What is this? Under the pretext of carbon credits, the United Arab Emirates and other countries in Europe and America are galloping vast lands. In fact, I read some of the other day that Liberia has now ceded almost 10% of its entire territory to a multinational company to do carbon credit, carbon trading. Fellow Africans, there is a second scramble for Africa. There's a second scramble for Africa. Now, it's not just Europe, it is also China, it is also Russia, it's all manner of players, Arab states in the Gulf, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, even Turkey. All of them are in the play. Everybody is scrambling for Africa. It's a second scramble. There are those that we might see in certain cases as our friends as we fight against the Westerners, but we have to keep one eye open because there is no benevolent hegemony. And the only way we can confront these challenges, this second scramble, is to unite. That is the imperative for African unity in our time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, King Hadi Yakubu, for that presentation. It's a reminder for all of us, really, what is at stake? What is at stake? If we do not unite, I love the idea that we know what are the tactics of our enemies. They like to divide and conquer, and that division is done in the physical, in terms of our borders, and it's in our mind, in our mental. Now, what do we need to do then going forward? I hear two words you were speaking of, is that we need to organize, and that's the same word that came out from last week's discussion. We need to organize ourselves differently. Unity is not optional at this stage, and if we don't do it now, we're at risk for another 100 years. So I like that urgency, that this is the hour. So the question, perhaps, if we open the floor now for input and discussion. Thank you so much for that sterling presentation. We would like to have participation to all of those who are here. And let's imagine, what would it take in this very season, 2024, 2029, over the next 5 years, to change and shape Africa differently? How do we organize ourselves and unite ourselves? Let's hear more of those thoughts that will help us move, because the single assignment of this generation, the only assignment we have in this generation, is to unite Africa before we die, in our time, in our generation. And to get that done, let's make headway within this 2024, 2029. What can we do to shift with the game in this hour? So the floor is open. You just open your mic and we'll acknowledge you, and then we please keep to about 3 minutes so that we cover as much, and then if we have more time, we'll come back to you. But 3 minutes inputs and thoughts in this contribution. We are saying the imperative for African unity in our time. That is the title of the discussion. So the floor is open. Who would like to take up the platform first? Just indicate by opening the mic, and then I will acknowledge you. I'm not sure if I'm coming clear. I'm hoping I'm coming clear. My audio is clear. Great stuff. Do we have any takers? All right.
Yes, you heard.
Okay, go for it, King Kabbalah.
All right. No, thank you very much to King RD, and thank you very much to King Fanul as well for hosting us so far. This has been a wonderful presentation and discussion as well. The imperative of African unity with our time. I think there's a lot of feedback from King Hardy's mic. Do you mind muting your mic, please?
Oh, sorry about that.
No, it's all fine. It's just that I'm getting feedback from my... Thank you very much. That's very much perfect. Now, I'm very happy for this discussion.
For some reason, if I mute my mic, I'm not able to hear anybody. Can you mute it from your end?
Oh, I see. Then you want to leave it open then, so that you'll be able to hear. Are you able to hear us? Are you able to hear us?
I can hear you now.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Now, I was saying that this is a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much for this presentation. It's a well-known topic. It's almost every day's topic when we go into Pan-Africanism. We talk about unity, but sometimes because we talk about this every day, we seem to not even grasp the importance of these subjects of African unity. Because for me personally, I think it is actually a matter of survival. If we are not able to unite ourselves today and to organize ourselves to begin doing things that will give to Africa that dimension of power and of protection that we need, then we are doomed to really to be destroyed, because we are even talking about sixth extinction now as we're speaking, one of the major extinctions that have destroyed a lot of creatures on earth, that we don't even know about as we're speaking now. They're talking about the beginning of a sixth phase of extinction, and the most vulnerable people that can be easily wiped are just African people, because we are defenseless. We are defenseless because we are disorganized and because we are disunited. So this topic is very important when you look in the world today. I think King mentioned the current tendency between China, Russia, and so and so, but I want to bring you maybe to the side of artificial intelligence, the kind of progress that we are seeing now. They've been already talking about population overshoot, which means the number of people is growing faster than the available resources that are there, according to the Western thinkers. So they have already started to think, according to their projection of 2050, what will be the demography in the world especially of African people. They've already started to think what can be done to reduce the world population. And bear in mind that European population is in decline. And every time a population is declining, what comes to their mind, or their psychology shifts into that mode of self-protection, self-survival. Therefore, it's even easier for them just to poison us through the food that we are eating, medicine, all these things that we depend on them, because they see themselves as a declining people. So the growth of African demography is a threat to them. So we need to understand all these things, and there's no way that one single country that I usually call colonial enclosure, such as Congo, Burkina Faso, Mali, Nigeria, South Africa, will be able to stand if these Western powers that are very well united decide to do something on Africa. You see, and the most important thing that we don't understand, mostly I think the most important that we people don't understand, is that they don't look at the world in which they are living. When you look in the world today, all institutions of power, whether you talk about the banks, they are all united. They are all working in connections, in close collaboration. When the policy is amended, they implement those policies across the globe. You can talk about SWIFT system. You can see how Russia was kicked out because of SWIFT system. All the banks are using those. So all the banking system is united. All the major corporations are united. All the major countries, where they talk about England, France, all those 27 now of European countries are united. Even we can still even talk about 28, because they are all, most of them are still members of NATO. So those with power, they are united, but only us who are weak, we feel so proud to jump on the street to say, I'm a Congolese, I'm this. We don't see the necessity to unite, even though we are facing the danger of extinction. So I think this kind of topic is very, very important, and I just want to say thank you very much for your wonderful presentation, and I hope this presentation will be a kind of a clock in our minds as African people to remind ourselves of the imperative of unity at this moment, so that we can come together. When we say coming together, we don't just mean coming and sit and look at each other in the faces. We're talking about organization. We're talking about unity of purpose. We need to question ourselves, when we come together, what kind of business can we run as African people to create jobs for ourselves? If we come together, what kind of policy we can push across the continent so that the system can change? If we come together, what kind of structures we can create in order to influence the African Union, to influence the UN, so that Africa can benefit? So these are the discussions that we need to pragmatically begin to discuss now, and to come together, consolidate our efforts, and rebuild Africa as a global power base. Peace and love. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, King Kabbalah, for that contribution. Yes, this is imperative that we unite now. If we don't do it, we're at the risk of being extinct in Africa, simply because we can't defend ourselves. The floor is still open. We would like more discussion. So open your mic when you're ready, then I will recognize you. While we wait for contributors, okay, there is King Ebenezer. You can go for it.
Please, good evening to kings and queens. And as I'm speaking, please, my English is not well better as well. Thank you, King Yakubu, for the message.
Please fire away. It's not our language. So
I understand.
Don't bother.
Thank you, King Yakubu, for the message you just treated for us now, which is this moment. I am interested in this topic. For me, I hoping that if this message is just daily and daily out activity for the youth, or we just tell the youth about this message, I think it will be the revolution for the youth to their mind to come, which is unity. Please, the English is bad. I'm trying, but I have confidence in, but I'm trying. When we just treat this message in our schools, to tell the youth, which is the youth, that the Europeans just divide the African continent to they give the names to us, giving us the border. When you treat when this topic is treated in our schools, it will help the youth, or it will help us that African unity can be best. For me, I am interested in this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, King Ebenezer. No need to be worried. I think King Yakubu referred to mental division. So one of the things that have divided us is because we have identified ourselves with the borders that we've found ourselves in, and therefore, if I'm part of the former British enclosures, therefore English. If I come from the French bloc, therefore French. Portuguese, and all of these things. So that is a single thing to do that needs to dismantle that. The first thing is to choose our own language, and we've been speaking about Swahili. That let's start learning Swahili as a commitment of 2024. That's an intent to unite ourselves and bridge the gap. Perhaps if everybody starts that language. And second effect, maybe let's stop calling ourselves South Africans or Ghanaians or Zimbabweans. Let's say we are Africans. It doesn't matter where we are, whether we're in America, we're in London, we're in Australia. Let's just be okay with being called Africans, and perhaps that immediately sets an agenda in motion that we therefore need to organize ourselves to send the pressure on all the governments that exist on our continent, 54 of them, and tell them we want these borders down within this very year, 2024. We can exert that pressure. And the only way in a democratic dispensation to exert pressure is mobilize numbers. Now imagine if you organize a march in all 54 territories with the same petition, in the same day, and not do it only on the soil of Africa, but do it everywhere globally where we've got sons and daughters of this continent. Imagine in all 195 jurisdictions, we serve a petition to each head of state and tell them that Africa now wants everybody to give her sovereignty back. We do not want to have these borders anymore. We want to open the borders for all Africans, sons and daughters of this, to travel freely visa-free travel, whether you come from the US as an African, whether you come from London, whether you come from the Caribbeans, because if you relax the trade and you relax the travel, then the issue of trade amongst ourselves, start learning and sharing knowledge, and support each other and invest in each other's brands and things, so it only possible if we can unite around a language and unite around a continent and recognize that we are one people, irrelevant where we sit in the world. And quite frankly, numbers favor Africa, because 1 in 4 of the global 8 billion people is an African. And even in the global labor force, 2 in 4 is an African. So which means Africa today is single-handedly responsible for driving the global economy. It's our doctors, it's our engineers, it's our teachers, it's our factory workers, it's our people that are running economies globally. So because of that, we are also feeding the world. We are exporting our own first grade crops, meat produce, crops, and minerals. We are reaching everywhere, and we are the one financing people's energy and currencies. We give them our gold and they print notes out of it. So you can imagine. So if Africa has a united voice and prize its expertise and prize its minerals and prize its produce as a fully value added to the foreign territories, we would be making the income that we should be making. Nobody ripping us off, but getting the true value of our labor, of our produce on the global arena. And it can only happen when Africa stands together as one voice, because it's true what King Yakubu is saying. What can Togo do really, Mara? What is Djibouti in the picture and the scheme of this continent? What is Lesotho, Eswatini as a nation? Botswana, these nations are under 2 million. What is that against, everybody? You are open to be looted and taken advantage of and abused and bullied because you can't stand. But if we stand, we have at least 2 billion sons and daughters of this continent everywhere, in diaspora, in the territories in America, in London. So that means if you mobilize at that scale, then we can shake the world. Just this very hour, we can shake the world. Just tell all the sons and daughters, as 2 in 4 in the labor force, to stay at home for this week. Then you will see the global economy crash. Just tell these 2 billion sons and daughters to redirect their buying power into African brands. Then you will see the global economies tremble. That's as easy as that. So the question is, how do we reach these 2 billion at speed? For me, the idea is that let's get a commitment that this year, 2024, we get a handful of teams that set up operation in each jurisdiction. I'm looking for just 20 people who says, I'm willing to set up office in this territory. Then we will grow from there. 20 times 195 jurisdiction gives us an organization with 3,900 officials. Now you give me just that 4,000, I can rock this earth, because we can mobilize and grow exponentially. Even if we said each member grows by 20, you would shoot to almost 80,000 in this very year, 2024. And with 80,000 people, you can cause waves. You can exact force and pressure on the global system. And I think that's where we need to go. So maybe as we walk away, I would like a commitment that every one of us here committed to mobilizing whatever organizations that are Pan-African. Let's collaborate, let's unite. That's what African Continental Unity Party wants to do, so that we exact a force together against the system. We push back, and we need to mobilize the number so that we have the critical mass to make that happen. So if there's anything we take away from King Hadi Yakubu's discussion tonight, is that let every one of us listening here make that commitment that first you're an African, and make a commitment that you're going to learn a common language, Swahili, and then you're going to mobilize territories and people that you know. You'll point them at us and say, let's collaborate this very year. That's what we want. The floor is still open. So let's have contributions. You just open your mic. We will identify you. Do we have anybody who would like to jump in? Okay. So this is 2100. We have actually 2130. So we have actually run out of time. But I was prepared to take just one more before we ask the king to just maybe wrap up for us with considering some of the inputs that have been shared. So do we have a last taker? Okay, I'm going to take that as we all are happy and we know what we need to do. Then King Yakubu, just to push back to you for considering some of the inputs and thoughts. Maybe if you can just last words for us to wrap it up, and then we're gonna just ask maybe Queen Zanele among us to close for us. Just last word and consider this setting close. We would love to hear the Queen. King Yakubu.
Yes, thank you very much. I duly appreciate all the contributions that have come in. I think it shows that we are on the same page, and it shows that at least we have a foundation to build upon. I particularly run a Pan-African movement called Africans Rising. And one of the key campaigns that we are running is called the Borderless Africa campaign, which we are using to push for removal of visas and all border restrictions to facilitate freedom of movement, intra-African freedom of movement for Africans, because this point needs to be emphasized. I think we have to also be very clear when we talk about African unity, that we are talking very clearly and very, very deliberately and very expressively about one united continental Africa and united under one government. Doesn't matter. We can discuss whether we want it as a federal or confederation or whatever, but united in that sense, with one central bank of issue, one military command that can take swift decisions about the threats to our African sovereignty, with one currency that we can trade amongst, you can use to trade amongst ourselves across the continent, with one communication system that it makes absolutely no sense for me to move from Senegal into Gambia and I have to change my SIM card because that is a different country code. It makes no sense. We have to have one communications system, and we have to I think in our organization we have to be very explicit about these things so that we begin to internalize them in our minds and pass it on to all the people that we meet along the way. that this is what we mean when we talk about African unity. There should be no doubt. There should be no doubt about it in our minds that this is what we mean. This is what we need. Other people might have other ideas about what Pan-Africanism is. But for us, this is what we mean, and this is what we are organizing for. Because we know that this is the only thing that will give us power. In this world today, if you don't have power, you are food for others. No two ways. If you don't have power, you are food. They will just eat you up. And I like the contribution that came in earlier, that when we talk about African unity, we are actually in this day and age talking about a matter of survival. That is the only way we can survive this second onslaught, or third, or fourth, or whatever number it is. But this onslaught with AI and the most vicious armies, we will be wiped out. This is a matter of survival. And Kwame Nkrumah already warned us that Africa must unite or we perish. And this is the time that we would perish. And if you want to see that they can wipe us out, you only have to look at the introduction of the GMOs, the way GMOs are being pushed on us. All our little countries are being manipulated into signing GMOs. GMOs are political tools, geopolitical tools. They come into your environment and they take over the land. Your local crops can no longer grow on the land. And once you become dependent on them, these crops, you cannot replant them. You plant them 1 year, that's it. Our farmers plant and replant and replant. If you plant these ones 1 year, they have a terminator gene, you cannot plant it the next year. So you have to buy again. After a few years, we become dependent on these seeds. Who manufacture these seeds? Only 2 multinational companies have monopoly over these seeds that we see, these GMO technologies that we see. What does that mean? We become dependent on this. It is in their hands whether we eat or we starve to death. It is in their hands whether we eat or we starve to death. So this onslaught, we will not survive it if we do not unite. We will not survive it. We can only survive it at their mercy. Now, artificial intelligence has now enabled the imperialists to make. Now they are now experimenting with weapons that are able to identify particular gene types and shoot precisely based on genes. We already know about biological weapons that they make to push on us. So it is a matter of survival, and we must. I think we have to, yes, organize, but in our organization, let us be very explicit. You know, we've talked so much for so long. Talking is good. It helps us to convert people, but now is the time to put the talk into action. So wherever you are, join a Pan-African movement. Make it very clear and very explicit. Your goal is African unity. And what do you mean by African unity? What do you mean by African unity is one African government, one currency, one passport, one military command, one central bank of issue. These things must be non-negotiable in our organization and in our political education. And once we get to that critical mass, the power of the people can no longer be ignored. And I'll just take the opportunity to announce that as part of the Borderless Africa campaign, in this May, we are organizing series of marches in different African countries to push this issue. So I like I like that um, uh, you've mentioned it, and this is what one of the things that we want to do. We are ready to collaborate and to support other initiatives and other works that other Pan African groups are doing, so long as we have the same mind, and so long as, for me, to be honest with you, I I um, I do not want to get involved in things that are there just to talk or just to show who is more Pan-Africanist than another. I'm no longer interested in those things. And I'm very forthright about it. It is not, I'm not arrogant. I'm not, belittling somebody or anything. I'm just not interested in that. If it comes to organizing, if it comes to moving forward with pushing this and making sure that this reaches where it needs to reach, I'm all in. And I'll support as much as I can. But if it's something that, people want to, I've been in spaces where people just want to talk about who has read more about Kwame Nkrumah, who has read more about Amilcar Cabral, or who has, all of that is important, but I'm no longer interested in those things. Now is the time to move forward with what we know and learn what we do not know in the process. We don't need to have perfect conditions before we can move. Thank you.
Thank you so much, King. Yes, thank you. Much appreciated. The message is loud and clear. Perhaps we'll just ask Queen Zanele to close for us, and then that's it. Queen Zanele, just your voice. How is Kenya?
Greetings. Can everyone hear me?
Loud and clear.
Mfanelo, it's been quite a long time. Well, I hope you're doing well in South Africa, and greetings to the whole house. Greetings to the kings and queens. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. First of all, I'm seeing really new names here. It means we are growing. The Pan-Africanism, liberation, repatriation is expanding in ways that we cannot get to explain. The king that just finished talking, King Yakubu, greetings, and it's a pleasure to get to know you, and you're doing a really good job. I'm sorry I came in quite late, but I just heard what you said, and that's really, beautiful. So in regards to the topic of the day, I didn't get to quite catch up the better part, of the class. But then I'm aware that we were discussing about the imperative, of African unity in our time. So in short, we are trying to talk about the cruciality of African unity to us, the cruciality during our time with the people who are currently here, the fathers that started the repatriation journey. 99% of them, we know they got, assassinated, cold blood killings. People like, Kwame Nkrumah, people like Patrice Lumumba, they lied to the people. And these are people that they murdered. People like Sankara. But then we know in our head that these are the founding fathers of revolution, actually, in Africa. So the whole entire time when I was listening, since I was really, aware of the topic that we are talking about today, I think I'm going to get to put ahead just a few remarks, in regards to, I'm going to give a few points in regards to the imperative, African unity in our time. So I've been thinking this way, humanity is we cannot avoid death. In short, death is inevitable. So definitely, and then we know there are kings who started the journey, they're kings and queens, they're really great people of the continent, the great people of our Black continent who started the movement to unite the people. But then, life cut them short. So, as a people, I first of all feel like it's our mandate to get to continue the dream, because they taught us about their dream. They shared, their visions with us, so that one day when they're not here, we can still carry the wheel and go ahead. I was thinking maybe a driver is on, let me use South Africa, King Fanelo. A driver is riding a bus, is driving a bus from maybe Cape Town, and is going to Joburg. And on the way, the car, the driver maybe collapses or something. The passengers and the whole bus is not going to stay there, because now the driver is not able to get to drive anymore. They're going to get to sort out the driver, but then get another driver to make sure the car gets to its destination. So I think that is the main imperative, for African unity during our time. We need to get to continue what our founding fathers did, what people like Bob Marley been advocating for till today, the things that people like Sankara dreamed of. Because when you get to look at them, actually it's us, it's me and you listening to this that is going to benefit. We are the black skin that they were talking about. We are the people they call nigger, they call us Negroes and stuff. So I think that's one of the main imperatives. And then, we see the system. Just today, my head was telling me, the system is just, promises and cruise. The system will smile at you. You are very, very hungry stomach, and they're smiling at you and you're hungry. So the work of the system is just, promises and cruise. So we are going to be parents, and this is our generation. We are literally disgusted by what is going on. That makes you question, definitely, death is inevitable. One day you're going to be underground or something of that sort. You're going to get to ask yourself, what is going to happen when I'm not here? And if I don't push for, unity, if I don't push for a better life for the black people, what is literally going to happen? Let's imagine right now, our founding fathers for the revolution thing, all of them literally passed away. There's no founding father for African unity. People like Marcus Garvey, they're all dead. So let's say we stayed in a situation where, okay, let's just decide to forget. Sankara is dead now. Kwame Nkrumah is dead now. Mobutu is dead, something of that sort. So let's just keep quiet and just let's continue living in slavery. First of all, it's felt like these people were fighting for us, but we are not grateful. We are not ready to get to hold their hands up so that we can get to unite as a people together. Because we know Sankara was a great man, but he could not fight alone. He had to always have speeches across Africa, things of that sort, to liberate Africans. People like Kwame Nkrumah, he used to talk to his people to make them aware that there's really trouble. So these people made us aware that there's trouble, and they made us get to see our worth. So if someone makes us see our worth, then we get to drop what they think, and their efforts in getting to fight for us, we leave them to get to sink in the waters. We shall have failed our ancestors. It feels like someone is giving you food, then you get to spit on them. You're never going to get to eat spit again. If someone feeds you and they feed you for free, we definitely know that none of us woke up one morning and told Kwame Nkrumah, hey, can you please get to fight for us? Nobody woke up one morning, and told Bob Marley, hey, can you get to fight for black people? These people decided, and they literally gave their whole damn life for us, the people that they didn't even know. None of us never saw even Marcus Garvey, people of that sort. But then when we listen to what they do, you literally feel like these people are for us. So that's one of the crucial things, the crucial reasons why we get to need to have unity. And then, I also noticed that the things that the black race were fighting for 2 centuries ago are the same things that we are still fighting for today. But then we've noticed that these things, they get to reduce with time. Slavery was banned because black people fought. Slavery was not banned because the whites now said, hey, let's just stop, enslaving them. Slavery was banned because the black community complained. They went on hunger strikes. They went on work strikes. They went to the roads in riots and things of that sort. That is what burned slavery. So that means, that literally shows you, we've seen the results. We've seen the results of speaking up for ourselves. We've seen the results where nowadays, a black person can be allowed better living conditions in a work field, same as a white man. These things came because we fought for them. So that definitely tells you, if we keep fighting step by step on the problems that black people have been having for the couple of centuries that we've been having them, we are definitely getting there with time. We're definitely getting there with time. So I'm sorry I'm late, and I'm sorry I talked quite so much. Well, I get really excited, when I see people converge, together to talk about the unity of me and you, the black skin. We need to get to unite ourselves. Yesterday I was just telling myself, when a black man is when a white man, you know, is has passed through racism, when you discriminate a white person, they call it racism. But when a black man is discriminated, they'll be like, you know, that is normal. You're not even supposed to get to talk about it. When a black man talks about them being discriminated, you know, the white race, the Caucasians, they get to say, we are just extreme. We want attention and all that sort. So the white man, Winnie Mandela once said, you know, the white man, according to the white man, you don't exist until they say you exist, you know, and literally we can see that. You know, a white man comes to you and tell you, hey, we discovered Mount Kenya. I've been seeing a meme online for quite a very long time. You know, it's a meme about Nigeria. It's saying, I don't know, Akwa Ibom people carrying Mungo Park to go discover River Niger. So, you know, first of all, the context of that meme is that these people, the people carrying the guy to go discover River Niger, they definitely knew where River Niger is, because they cannot take you where they don't know. So it's someone is taking you to a river to help them discover it. The river is literally there. So that explains to you that according to the white man, you do not exist until they say you exist. So I'd urge my Black kings and queens to get to unite ourselves. Let's have more of these classes. Let's liberate even in your communities. I've normalized, you know, 90% of the time when I'm mingling with people, I must get to mention about Pan-Africanity. I'll just twist stories, you know, till we get to a point where I get to ask someone, what do you think about Africa right now? What do you think about my race right now? What do you see happening? Are you happy? Are you contented? You know, there's a song that always sings, you know, look at that hungry child. Do you see anything to smile about? You know, look at that black man, you know, being hit in the head for no apparent reason. Do you see anything to smile about? So yeah, I get to make sure that on my daily basis, I get to infuse Pan-Africanism in 90% of the things that I do. So I'm going to get to leave it at that. Kings and queens, let's get to unite. And one thing I'm going to get to remind you all, please create time and get to learn Swahili. That is one great way of getting to unite as a people. If we'll all learn Swahili, I'll be going to South Africa, I'll be going to Nigeria, and I'll be like, hey, sasa, habari asubuhi. Definitely we can get each other. We have a common language, you know, we can get each other. So whenever you're free, kings and queens, download Duolingo, wherever, if you can enroll for Swahili classes. If you can come to me, I can teach you. I'm from Kenya. So in Kenya, Swahili is the official and the national language. Our official and national language, both is just Swahili. So I'd urge you all to do that. I'll end it at that with the quote. There's a quote from Central Africa saying Zokwezo. Zokwezo definitely means all people are people. So keep that in your head. All people are people. Aluta continua, everyone. Thank you.